I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, especially not with someone I trusted so completely. My wife, Lisa, had been my anchor for years. We met in college, got married right after, and for the most part, life felt predictable and safe. That was until I started noticing small things, little cracks in the perfect picture we'd painted. I brushed them off at first, telling myself I was overthinking. But then I found something that changed everything. It was a quiet Tuesday evening when I decided to finally clean out the drawer in our bedroom. You know, those drawers you just toss everything into and forget about. I was rummaging through it, expecting to find some old bills or maybe a few forgotten socks. Instead, I found a receipt tucked behind a stack of receipts from months ago. It was from a hotel I didn't recognize. Nothing unusual about that except the date. It was from just a week ago. My stomach clenched. I stared at the receipt, my mind racing. The hotel was an hour away, an upscale place Lisa had always claimed she didn't care for. I looked closer. The bill was paid in cash, no card records, and the reservation was under a different name. My heart hammered harder. I flipped through some of the receipts and there were more: hotel stays, dinners, small gifts, all paid for in cash. The kind of cash you wouldn't keep around unless you were hiding something. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was just a work thing or a surprise for a friend. But even as I told myself that, I knew better. The pieces didn't add up. Lisa had been distant lately, more preoccupied, her excuses flimsy. And this was the proof I needed that something was going on. Later that night I confronted her. I kept my voice steady, but my hands trembled. "Lisa, what's this?" I held up the receipt. Her face froze. The fleeting smile she always wore when she lied was gone. She stared at it, a shadow crossing her eyes. "Oh, that," she said, brushing it off, but her voice was too quick. "It's nothing, you're overthinking again." I stepped closer, feeling my palms go clammy. "You've been sneaking around. This isn't just a hotel stay for some business trip or friend's birthday, is it?" She looked away, biting her lip. "I didn't mean for you to find out like this." The room suddenly felt too small, too suffocating. I saw the slight tremor in her hands, the way she avoided eye contact. I wanted to believe she'd tell me the truth, but I knew better. The evidence was all there. This wasn't a one-time thing. It was a pattern I'd missed. That night I lay awake, feeling a mixture of betrayal and anger boiling inside me. My stomach was tight and my thoughts kept circling back to that hotel room, that secret life she was hiding. I didn't sleep much, just stared at the ceiling and imagined what I was going to do. I had to plan carefully. I needed a way to get to the bottom of this without losing myself in rage. The next morning I started gathering data. I checked her phone, nothing overt, but I noticed some suspicious text messages. I set up a recording app on her phone during a conversation she had with someone I didn't know. I wanted to know who she'd been talking to, what she'd been hiding. Whatever this was, it was more than just a fling. I could feel it in my bones. I knew I had to be smart. Confronting her head-on might blow everything up, but I couldn't keep pretending I was blind. The trust was shattered, and I needed to see how deep the damage went before making my next move. I spent hours planning, watching her every move and trying to keep my cool. I didn't want to blow my cover before I was ready to act. That night I sat at my desk, reviewing all the evidence I'd collected. The hotel receipts, the messages, the recordings, some I was sure would hurt her more than I expected, and that's exactly what I wanted. I had to be ready. This wasn't just about catching her cheating, it was about revenge for the pain she'd caused me without even realizing it. I looked out the window, the city lights flickering softly in the dark. I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to let her walk away scot-free. She thought she was clever, sneaking around behind my back, but she'd made a mistake. Now I'd make sure she paid for it. And that's when I started to craft my plan. But I'd keep it simple, focused, precise. No more guessing games. I'd show her that betrayal came with consequences and I'd be the one to deliver them. All I needed was the right moment, the right evidence, and the courage to follow through. Just then my phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. I hesitated, then opened it. It was a photo, a picture of Lisa with another man taken in the hotel lobby last week. My breath hitched. That was it, the final piece. I stared at it, feeling like my world was tilting. I'd been right all along. I knew what I had to do next, but I also knew this was just the beginning. I stared at the photo for a long moment, feeling my pulse pound harder in my temples. There was Lisa, unmistakably herself, standing close to a man I'd never seen before. They looked comfortable, the kind of comfort that only came from secrets and betrayal. She was laughing, the kind of genuine laugh that used to make my stomach flutter. Now it just made me sick. It was almost like I could hear the faint sound of her voice over the faint hum of the city below, mocking me, rubbing in the fact that I'd been blind for so long. I rubbed my eyes, trying to clear the fog of shock. My hands felt clammy again, and I had to grip the edge of the desk to steady myself. I'd kept calm through the entire process of gathering evidence, but now it was real. She'd been lying to my face, sneaking off, perhaps even deceiving me right under my nose. I couldn't just sit here and stew. I had to act, and fast. The first thing I did was call my lawyer, just to get a sense of my options. I kept the call discreet, speaking in hushed tones, not wanting her to suspect anything. After that, I took a long breath and started drafting what I'd say when I finally confronted her face to face. I knew I couldn't do this impulsively. I had to be deliberate, make her realize I knew everything, without tipping her off too early. Late that night, I went over everything again. Every piece of evidence, every text, every little detail that proved she'd been lying. And then I remembered the small camera I'd hidden in the living room months ago just in case. I had dismissed it at first, but now I realized it might be useful. I drained the battery, turned it on, and left it pointed discreetly toward the hallway. That was when the plan started to take shape. I wasn't just going to confront her with accusations. I was going to catch her red-handed. I wanted her to realize I was intentional about getting to the truth, that I'd been watching her for days. That way, when I finally laid everything out, she'd know I was serious, and I'd have the evidence to back it up. The next day was tense. I kept my phone closed, waiting for the right moment. I pretended everything was normal, even though my stomach kept twisting. She was acting strange too, more fidgety, avoiding eye contact, nervously checking her phone every few minutes. I wanted to scream at her, but I kept my cool. I had to be cold and calculated. That afternoon, I called her into the living room under the guise of talking about our upcoming vacation. She walked in, her face a mask of composure, but her hands were trembling slightly. I decided to go for it. I pulled out the pictures and showed her the photo from last night, then played the recordings I'd made. Her eyes widened, her face draining of color. "Explain this," I said firmly, holding the phone out to her. "Who is this man, Lisa?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again, her face contorted with guilt and frustration. "It's not what you think," she finally whispered. "It's complicated. Complicated. You've been sneaking around behind my back, lying, and now you want to call it complicated." My voice was sharp, gravelly with anger. "I have proof, video, photos, recordings. How much more do you think I need?" She looked like she was about to cry, but I was beyond caring. I'd already made up my mind. I'd catch her in her own game. I told her I knew her secrets and I'd been watching her. Her defenses crumbled quickly after that. She sank onto the couch, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Please," she begged, voice trembling. "Can we just talk? We can fix this, I swear." "I don't think so," I said coldly. "You lied to me for months. You thought you could do whatever you wanted. Well, I've had enough of being the fool." Her trembling hands reached into her purse and I stiffened, expecting her to pull something out, but she only pulled out an envelope. I hesitated, then took it from her. Inside was a stack of cash, more than I'd seen in years, presumably from her secret guy. That was the final confirmation I needed. My head was spinning, but I held myself steady. I told her, "This is over. I'm done. You're not coming back from this." I didn't yell. I kept my tone even, deliberate, but inside I felt the fire burning hotter than ever. I told her to pack her things. She looked at me with pleading eyes, but I didn't care. The moment was ours, and I was finally taking control. I instructed her to leave by the end of the day. I wanted her out of my house, out of my life. I needed her gone before I changed my mind. As she gathered her things, I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to tear her apart, but another part just wanted to end it all. The house was silent once she left. I sat down on the sofa, shivering from the adrenaline, staring at the empty space where she'd just been. I knew this wasn't the end, that I might need to do more. But for now, I'd taken the first step. I'd finally uncovered the truth, and I'd shown her I wasn't going to be played for a fool anymore. The revenge was in motion, and I was done being the victim. The real question was, what was I going to do next? The house felt different once Lisa was gone. Quiet, almost deafeningly so. The walls, which used to echo with her voice or her footsteps, now just absorbed the silence. I sat on the couch, my mind replaying everything I'd uncovered. The photos, the recordings, the cache, each piece fitting into a puzzle I'd refused to see before. Now, it was all laid out in front of me, undeniable. I felt the sharp sting of betrayal like a wound fresh. It was a gnawing sensation in my gut, a mix of anger and disillusionment. I'd trusted her. I'd built a life with her, and she'd been sneaking around. Behind my back, the worst part. It wasn't just the cheating, it was the lies, the deception, the way she made me feel like I was crazy for doubting her. That was what cut deepest. Once she left, I knew I had to plan my next move. I couldn't just walk away, at least, not without making her understand that she'd crossed a line. She'd betrayed me in ways I'd never imagined, and I wanted her to feel the weight of it, to understand she'd messed with the wrong man. First, I took a deep breath, trying to steady the trembling in my hands. I went through every detail I'd gathered again, making sure I knew what I had and what I didn't. I wanted to be precise. This wasn't about a blind rage, it was about control. I had to get everything right if I wanted my revenge to hit the way I envisioned. My phone buzzed suddenly, making me jump. I almost dropped it. I checked the screen. It was a message from an unknown number. My heart pounded harder. I hesitated, then slowly opened it. The message was simple. "You're not done yet, watch out." No signature, no context, just those words like some sick game. I felt a cold sweat break out again. Whoever this was, they knew more than I thought. They knew I was onto something. I wondered if Lisa had someone helping her hide or if this was just some random threat. Either way, it made me more cautious. I realized I needed backup, someone who knew how to handle this kind of situation, someone who could help me execute my plan without risking everything. That night, I started making calls. I reached out to a friend I trusted, someone who knew how to dig beneath the surface, someone who could help me understand what I was really up against. I didn't tell him everything, just enough to get his advice. I knew I was walking a thin line here. If Lisa or her new friend caught wind of what I was doing, I could be in serious trouble. While I waited for his reply, I sat alone in my dimly lit apartment, feeling the weight of everything crashing down around me. My stomach was knotted, and I kept replaying the moment I saw Lisa walk out that door. The ache in my chest was almost unbearable. I'd been such a fool for so long, ignoring the signs, convincing myself things were fine, but they were, not anymore. A few hours later, my phone rang. My friend's voice on the other end was low but firm. "I've checked a few things. There's definitely more going on. Lisa's been meeting with someone, probably her guy. And I found some bank accounts that aren't linked to her officially. She's covering her tracks. We need to be careful." "Yeah," I muttered, feeling my jaw tight. I want her to see that I know what she's been doing. I want her to realize she's messed with the wrong guy. We discussed options, how to make her feel cornered, how to get her to slip up, how to ensure she wouldn't get away with this. I told him I wanted something concrete, a way to end this on my terms with her exposed and humiliated. He agreed, but warned me this wasn't going to be easy, and I had to be prepared for fallout. Over the next few days, I set my plan into motion. I increased my surveillance, made sure I had every detail covered. I planted a few hidden cameras, just enough to catch her in the act if she tried to slip back into the old pattern. I also started compiling all the evidence into a file, screenshots, recordings, bank statements. It was my insurance, my ammunition. One evening, I decided to pay her a visit, just to see if she'd slipped up again. I pretended I was just checking in, but inside, I was watching her every move. She was nervous, nervous enough to accidentally leave her phone unattended. I grabbed it, copying some messages she'd been hiding. Nothing overt yet, but the pattern was clear. After that, I knew I had her exactly where I wanted her. All the pieces were in place. I didn't plan on confronting her yet, not directly. No, I wanted her to feel the pressure, to think she was still in control while I quietly pulled the strings. This game of cat and mouse was just beginning, and I was ready to make her regret ever crossing me. The feeling of control was intoxicating. I'd been betrayed, yes, but now I was the one holding the cards. She'd underestimated me, just like everyone else in her life. And when I finally made my move, she'd understand that the man she thought she could cheat on was no longer the fool she'd taken him for. I looked out the window again, watching the city lights flicker. I knew I was close to the point of no return, but I also knew I was finally taking back what was mine. And no matter what happened next, I wouldn't let her walk away unscathed. It was only a matter of time before I showed her that betrayal had consequences. The days that followed were a blur of preparation and quiet anticipation. I kept everything under control, no unnecessary risks, no slip-ups. My friend helped me set up a few more discreet cameras, places she wouldn't suspect, so I could catch her in the act if she tried to go back to her old routine. I also started tracking her movements more carefully, noting her usual routes and who she was meeting. Every little detail added fuel to my plan. One thing was clear: she was still lying, still hiding something. I'd found more evidence of secret meetings, late-night calls, and cash withdrawals that didn't match her usual spending habits. The more I uncovered, the more I saw. She was digging herself into a hole. I didn't want to go into this blindly. I wanted her to see she'd been caught, cornered by her own deception. One evening, I decided to pay her a visit again, not to confront her directly, that could blow everything. I just wanted to see if she'd do anything I could use. I pretended to be casually checking in, acting like I was just making conversation. She was tense from the moment I stepped inside. Her eyes kept darting to her phone, her hands clenching and unclenching. She was hiding something, I could tell. I walked over to her, acting friendly but wary. "Hey, how's everything? Anything new?" I asked, trying to sound normal. She forced a smile, but her voice was shaky. "Nothing much, just life." I nodded, then casually reached into my pocket and pulled out a small device, the same hidden recorder I'd set up. I kept it discreetly in my hand. "Yeah. Life's got a way of revealing things, huh?" She looked startled for a brief second, then quickly masked it. "What do you mean?" "Nothing. Just saying," I said, trying to keep my tone even. "I've been checking some things, Lisa, things you might want to explain." Her face turned pale. "What are you talking about?" I played it cool. "I've caught you lying. There are messages you deleted, calls you tried to hide, and I have recordings." I paused. "I want to know why you're hiding all this from me." Her shoulders sagged. "I was just scared. I didn't know how you'd react." "Scared or guilty?" I shot back. "Look, I have proof. I've seen the receipts, the messages, and now I've got recordings of your late-night conversations. You can't deny it anymore." Her eyes welled with tears. "I never wanted to hurt you, it just happened. I was feeling lost and I made a mistake." I felt my jaw tight. "A mistake, that's what you call it." I clenched my fists, feeling a surge of anger. "You lied, betrayed everything we had, and you're telling me it just happened. That's bullshit, Lisa." She looked down, wiping her eyes. "Please don't make this worse. I didn't mean for you to find out like this." "I wish I could believe that," I said through gritted teeth. "But it's too late. You've been lying to me for months, and now I've got the proof." I reached into my pocket, pulling out my phone. "This is going to end tonight, Lisa. You can either come clean or keep lying. Either way, I've made up my mind." She looked at me with a mix of fear and regret, knowing the game was over. "I never wanted to hurt you. I was just confused. I thought I could fix this." "Yeah, well, I don't think I can fix this," I replied coldly. "You crossed a line and there's no coming back from that. This isn't just about infidelity, it's about trust, respect, and you've lost both." She threw her hands in the air, voice breaking. "Please just give me a chance to explain." "Save it," I interrupted. "You had your chance, Lisa, now it's my turn." I pressed record on my phone, capturing her words for good measure. "You need to leave, pack your things, and don't come back. I want your keys on the table before you go." Her shoulders sagged as she nodded silently, knowing she'd pushed me too far. I handed her the keys, watching her move slowly to gather her belongings. Every step felt like a final nail in the coffin of our marriage. I stayed silent, letting her pack, feeling the weight of everything I'd uncovered. As she finally slipped out the door, her eyes red and swollen, I knew this wasn't just a breakup. It was the start of the revenge I'd been quietly plotting. She thought she'd gotten away with it, thought she'd hide behind her lies. But I'd made sure she'd regret every second of this betrayal. I closed the door behind her, then sat down heavily. My hands still trembled slightly, but inside a strange calm had settled. I'd gotten what I needed, the proof, the closure, and I'd be damned if I let her ruin me with her lies anymore. Tonight I took back control. That was what mattered now. The fallout was coming, and I was ready to face it. The house was eerily quiet after Lisa left. I could hear the faint click of her heels fading down the hall, then the silence swallowed everything. I stayed frozen for a moment, listening to the emptiness. Every nerve in my body was alive, heart pounding, palms sweaty, stomach twisted in knots. I knew I'd won a battle, but the war wasn't over, not yet. I looked around the living room, eyes settling on the scattered evidence, her torn-out phone messages, the receipts, the recordings on my device. It all felt heavy, like a burden I'd been carrying for months finally lifted. But the victory was hollow. There was a strange sense of emptiness mixed with relief, like I'd just woken up from a nightmare. I knew I'd need to be strategic from here. Just kicking her out didn't mean this was over. I wanted her to feel the full weight of what she'd done. I wanted to make sure she understood she'd crossed a line she couldn't come back from. There was no going back to that false sense of security I'd had. Now, it was about taking control and making her regret her choices. First thing, I grabbed the evidence, photos, recordings, the bank statements, and compiled everything into a sealed folder. I'd planned to use it to confront her with everything, to show her I had all the cards. I wasn't interested in just revenge for the betrayal. I wanted her to see that she'd lost her grip on my trust, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, trying to steady my nerves. The bitter burn in my throat did little to dull the chaos inside. My mind kept racing. What would I do with the evidence? Would I expose her to her friends, her family? Would I make her regret ever thinking she could cheat and lie without consequences? The temptation to destroy everything she'd built was strong, but I knew I had to be careful. Right then, my phone buzzed again. I hesitated before answering. It was an unknown number. I pressed accept. "Listen, I saw what you're doing," a voice hissed on the other end, low and threatening. "You think you're in control now. You have no idea what you're messing with. She's not done yet." My stomach dropped. Who the hell was this? I felt a shiver run down my spine. Whoever this was, they were watching, waiting. I stayed calm, voice steady. "Who is this? What do you want?" "You'll find out soon enough. Just make sure you're ready," the voice said. Then the line went dead. I stared at the screen, feeling a cold sweat break out again. This wasn't just about Lisa anymore. Someone else was involved, someone watching, perhaps even meddling. Could be her new guy or someone else she was in contact with. Either way, it complicated everything. I knew I couldn't just sit back and let this happen. I had to be proactive. I reached out to my friend again, someone I trusted, and told him what I'd just heard. I wanted to know if he'd noticed anything unusual, any signs of trouble. He promised to look into it, but warned me to stay alert. Meanwhile, I spent the night strategizing. I decided I'd send her a final message, a clear message that I wasn't done yet. Not just to rattle her, but to make her understand I had the upper hand. I composed a simple text. "I know everything. You can't run from the truth anymore. Be careful who you trust." I hit send, then sat back, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and anxiety. I'd finally taken control, but a new threat was emerging. I had to keep my guard up. Next morning, I went through the evidence one last time, making copies and storing everything securely. I knew I had to keep some cards hidden, just in case. I also decided to check her social media accounts. Some of her posts seemed normal, but I noticed a few suspicious interactions, comments from someone I didn't recognize. My gut told me there was more going on beneath the surface. Later that day, I received a message from a mutual friend who had no idea about the betrayal. They asked if I was okay, how I was holding up. I told them I was handling things, but I kept it vague. I didn't want to tip Lisa off or alert her new accomplice. By nightfall, I was ready to execute the next phase. I had all my evidence prepared, and I knew what I wanted to do next. I was going to confront her, or at least set a trap to catch her in a lie if she tried to come back. I wanted her to see that I was serious about exposing her, that her secrets weren't safe anymore. I watched her house from a distance that evening, feeling a strange calm settle over me. I knew I was crossing a line, but I also knew I had no choice. If I didn't act now, she'd keep lying, keep sneaking around, and I refused to be a fool any longer. This revenge wasn't just about anger, it was about reclaiming my dignity, about making her understand that betrayal had consequences, that she couldn't just walk away and pretend nothing had happened. I was ready. It was time to bring everything to a head. The night had come, and I was ready to put the final piece of my plan into motion. Every nerve in my body was taut with anticipation and a strange sense of calm, like I'd finally taken back control. The evidence I'd gathered was stacked neatly in my bag, ready to be unleashed at the right moment. I knew Lisa thought she'd escaped, that her secrets were safe behind her carefully guarded lies. But I was about to show her she'd been wrong all along. I waited until she'd likely be home, around midnight when her movements would be predictable. I parked a block away, keeping my engine running just in case I needed to get out quickly. I watched her. House through the windshield, the porch light flickering softly, casting long shadows across the yard. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I kept my hand steady. When she finally appeared, slipping inside quietly, I slipped out of the car and moved towards her front door. I had the keys she left behind, the ones I'd put into a sealed envelope, just in case. I quietly unlocked the door, my ears straining for any sounds inside. It was dead silent, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the muffled sounds of her moving around. I entered, every step deliberate. I didn't need to turn on the lights, just enough moonlight seeped in through the blinds. I moved to the dining table where I'd placed the evidence earlier that evening, the folder with everything she'd tried to hide. I set it carefully in the center of the table, then pulled out my phone, ready to record her reaction. I didn't have to wait long. A few minutes later, I heard the faint creak of the door, her footsteps. She was nervous, I could tell, her breathing uneven, her footsteps hesitant. She entered the room and froze when she saw the folder. Her eyes widened, and for a moment she just stared at it, eyes darting between me and the evidence. "Lisa," I said softly but firmly, "you thought you could lie, cheat, and hide forever, but I've seen enough." She swallowed hard, her face pale. "You shouldn't be doing this. Please just hear me out." "No," I cut her off. "You've had your chance. I'm done listening." I turned on the camera app on my phone, letting her see the indicator light. This is going to be proof she can't deny. She looked like she wanted to run, but I stepped closer, holding up the evidence. "You betrayed me in ways I can't forgive. All those nights, all those lies, you thought I wouldn't find out, but I did, and I'm not going to let you walk away without facing what you've done." Her voice cracked as she spoke. "I was scared. I didn't want to hurt you, but I made a mistake. Please, I never meant for it to get this far." I shook my head, feeling my jaw tight. "That's bullshit. People make mistakes, Lisa, but you chose to keep secrets. You chose to betray everything we had, and now I want you to understand the full weight of it." I pulled out the bank statements and recordings, placing them on the table next to the folder. "You thought you could hide this, your secret meetings, your cash payments, your lies. Well, I've got it all, and I'm done pretending I don't see who you really are." She looked down, trembling, tears streaming down her face. "Please, I didn't want it to end like this." "The hell you didn't," I snapped. "You thought I'd never find out, that I'd just accept your lies and move on. Not anymore." I stepped closer, voice low and dangerous. "This isn't just about cheating, it's about respect, trust, things you threw away willingly. And I want you to know I'm not going to let you do this to me anymore." I took a breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "You're leaving tonight. You can take your things or leave them, but I want you gone, and I want the keys on the table when you do." She looked at me with wide, haunted eyes. Without a word, she moved to gather her belongings, her hands trembling as she packed. I watched her silently, recording everything, knowing this was the moment she'd realize she'd lost everything she'd tried to keep hidden. When she finally reached the door, she paused, looked back at me, and whispered, "I'm sorry, I really am." I didn't respond. I just handed her the envelope with the keys. She took them silently, then slipped out the door, closing it behind her with a soft click. I remained standing there, listening to the fading sound of her footsteps. I felt the weight lift a little, but inside I knew I'd never fully escape the pain of betrayal. I turned off the camera, packed the evidence into a secure folder, and put it away. The house was silent once again. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sat on the couch, staring out the window at the darkened street. The adrenaline was subsiding, replaced by a calm sense of closure. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity, about ending the nightmare she dragged me through. I knew I'd face repercussions, and the fallout might be messy, but I had taken back my power. She thought her lies could keep her safe, but I'd shown her she was wrong. As I finally leaned back, I realized something. Moving on wouldn't be easy, but I'd survive today. And I'd do whatever it took to rebuild what I'd lost: trust, respect, or even just peace. Because in the end, that's what mattered most. And that's how I closed this chapter, knowing I'd done what I needed to do and ready to face whatever came next, alone but finally unshackled.